Praise the Lord. According to 1 Year Bible Reading Plan Day 51, we have Deuteronomy chapter 13 to 16. Deuteronomy chapter 13. Prophets and interpreters of dreams may promise a miracle or a wonder in order to lead you to worship and serve their gods that you have not worshipped before. Even if what they promise come true, do not pay attention to them. The Lord your God is using them to test you, to see if you love the Lord with all your heart. Follow the Lord and honor him. Obey him and keep his commands. Worship him and be faithful to him. But put to death any interpreters of dreams or prophets that tell you to rebel against the Lord, who rescued you from the Egypt, where you were slaves. Such people are evil and are trying to lead you away from the life that the Lord has commanded you to live. They must be put to death in order to rid yourselves of this evil. Even your brothers, or your son, or your daughter, or your wife, you love, or your closest friend may secretly encourage you to worship other gods, gods that you and your ancestors have never worshipped. Some of them may encourage you to worship the gods of the people who live near you or the gods of those who live far away. But do not let any of them persuade you. Do not even listen to them. Show them no mercy or pity, and do not protect them. Kill them. Be the first to stone them, and then let everyone else stone them too. Stone them to death. They tried to lead you away from the Lord your God, who rescued you from Egypt, where you were slaves. Then all the people of Israel will hear what happened. They will be afraid, and no one will ever do such an evil thing. When you are living in the towns that the Lord your God gives you, you may hear that some worthless people of your nation have misled the people of their town to worship gods that you have never worshipped before. If you hear such a rumor, investigate it thoroughly, and if it is true that this evil thing did happen, then kill all the people in that town and all the livestock too. Destroy that town completely. Bring together all the possessions of the people who lived there and pile them up in the town square. Then burn the town and everything in it as an offering to the Lord your God. It must be left in ruins forever and never again rebuilt. Do not keep for yourselves anything that was condemned to destruction, and then the Lord will turn from his fierce anger and show you mercy. He will be merciful to you and make you a numerous people, as he promised your ancestors, if you obey all his commands that I have given you today and do what he requires. Deuteronomy chapter 14. You are the people of the Lord your God. So when you mourn for the dead, don't gash yourselves or shave the front of your head, as other people do. You belong to the Lord your God. He has chosen you to be his own people from among all the peoples who live on earth. Do not eat anything that the Lord has declared unclean. You may eat these animals: cattle, sheep, goats, deer, wild sheep, wild goats, or antelopes. Any animals that have divided hooves and that also chew the cud. But no animals may be eaten unless they have divided hooves and also chew the cud. You may not eat camels, rabbits, or rock badgers. They must be considered unclean. They chew the cud but do not have divided hooves. Do not eat pigs. They must be considered unclean. They have divided hooves but do not chew the cud. Do not eat any of these animals or even touch their dead bodies. You may eat any kind of fish that has fins and scales, but anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales may not be eaten. It must be considered unclean. You may eat any clean bird, but these are the kinds of birds you are not to eat: eagles, owls, hawks, falcons, buzzards, vultures, crows, ostriches, seagulls, storks, herons, pelicans, cormorants, hoopoes, and bats. All winged insects are unclean. Do not eat them. You may eat any clean insect. Do not eat any animal that dies a natural death. You may let the foreigners who live among you eat it, or you may sell it to other foreigners. But you belong to the Lord your God. You are his people. Do not cook a young sheep or goat in its mother's milk. Set aside a tithe, a tenth of all that your fields produce each year. Then go to the one place where the Lord your God has chosen to be worshipped, and there in his presence eat the tithes of your grain, wine, and olive oil, and the firstborn of your cattle and sheep. Do this so that you may learn to honor the Lord your God always. If the place of worship is too far from your home for you to carry there the tithe of the produce that the Lord has blessed you with, then do this. Sell your produce and take the money with you to the one place of worship. Spend it on whatever you want: beef, lamb, wine, beer. And there, in the presence of the Lord your God, you and your families are to eat and enjoy yourselves. Do not neglect the Levites who live in your towns. They have no property of their own. At the end of every third year, bring the tithe of all your crops and store it in your towns. The food is for the Levites, since they own no property, and for the foreigners, orphans, and widows who live in your towns. They are to come and get all they need. Do this, and the Lord your God will bless you in everything you do. Deuteronomy chapter 15. At the end of every 7th year, you are to cancel the debts of those who owe you money. This is how it is to be done. Each of you who has lent money to any Israelite is to cancel the debt. You must not try to collect the money. The Lord himself has declared the debt cancelled. You may collect what a foreigner owes you, but you must not collect what any of your own people owe you. The Lord your God will bless you in the land that he is giving you. Not one of your people will be poor if you obey him and carefully observe everything that I commanded you today. The Lord will bless you as he has promised. You will lend money to many nations, but you will not have to borrow from any. You will have control over many nations, but no nation will have control over you. If any of the towns in the land that the Lord your God is giving you, there are Israelites in need, then do not be selfish and refuse to help them. Instead, be generous and lend them as much as they need. Do not refuse to lend something just because the year when debts are cancelled is near. Do not let such an evil thought enter your mind. If you refuse to make the loan, they will cry out to the Lord against you, and you will be held guilty. Give them freely and unselfishly, and the Lord will bless you in everything you do. There will always be some Israelites who are poor and in need, so I command you to be generous to them. If any Israelites, male or female, sell themselves to you as slaves, you are to release them after they have served you for 6 years. When the 7th year comes, you must let them go free. When you set them free, do not send them away empty-handed. Give them generously from what the Lord has blessed you with: sheep, grain, and wine. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God set you free. That is why I am now giving you this command. But your slave may not want to leave. He may love you and your family and be content to stay. Then take him to the door of your house, and there pierce his ear. He will be then your slave for life. Treat your female slave in the same way. Do not be resentful when you set slaves free. After all, they have served you for 6 years at the half cost of hired servants. Do this, and the Lord your God will bless you in everything that you do. Set aside for the Lord your God all the firstborn males of your cattle and sheep. Do not use any of these cattle for work, and do not shear any of these sheep. Each year you and your family are to eat them in the Lord's presence at the one place of worship. But if there is anything wrong with the animals, if they are crippled or blind or have any other serious defect, you must not sacrifice them to the Lord your God. You may eat such animals at home. All of you, whether ritually clean or unclean, may eat them, just as you eat deer or antelope. But do not use their blood for food. Instead, you must pour it out on the ground like water. Deuteronomy chapter 16. Honor the Lord your God by celebrating Passover in the month of Abib. It was on the night in that month that he rescued you from Egypt. Go to the one place of worship and slaughter there one of your sheep or cattle for the Passover meal to honor the Lord your God. When you eat this meal, do not eat bread prepared with yeast. For 7 days you are to eat bread prepared without yeast, as you did when you had to leave Egypt in such a hurry. Eat this bread, it will be called the bread of suffering, so that as long as you live you will remember the day you came out of Egypt, that place of suffering. For 7 days no one in your land is to have any yeast in your house, and the meat of the animal killed on the evening on the first day must be eaten that same night. Slaughter the Passover animals at the one place of worship, and nowhere else in the land that the Lord your God will give you. Do it at sunset, the time of day when you left Egypt. Boil the meat and eat it at the one place of worship, and the next morning return home. For the next 6 days you are to eat bread prepared without yeast, and on the seventh day assemble to worship the Lord your God, and do not work on that day. Count 7 weeks from the time that you begin to harvest the grain, and then celebrate the harvest festival to honor the Lord your God by bringing him a free will offering in proportion to the blessing he has given you. Be joyful in the Lord's presence, together with your children, your servants, and the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows who live in your towns. Do this at the one place of worship. Be sure that you obey these commands. Do not forget that you were slaves in Egypt. After you have threshed all your grain and pressed all your grapes, celebrate the festival of shelters for 7 days. Enjoy it with your children, your servants, and the Levites, foreigners, orphans, and widows who live in your towns. Honor the Lord your God by celebrating this festival for 7 days at the one place of worship. Be joyful because the Lord has blessed your harvest and your work. All the men of your nation are to come to worship the Lord 3 times a year at the one place of worship, at Passover, Harvest Festival, and the Festival of Shelters. Each man is to bring a gift as he is able, in proportion to the blessings that the Lord your God has given him. Appoint judges and other officials in every town that the Lord your God gives you. These men are to judge the people impartially. They are not to be unjust or show partiality in their judgments, and they have not to accept bribes, for gifts blind the eyes even of wise and honest men and cause them to give wrong decisions. Always be fair and just, so that you will occupy the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and so that you will continue to live there. When you make an altar for the Lord your God, do not put beside it a wooden symbol of the goddess Asherah, and do not set up any stone pillar for idol worship. The Lord hates them. May the Lord bless us abundantly. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.